Well, good afternoon, everyone. 5:30. In this particular meeting today, we are going to be live streaming, so please make sure that if you have a comment, need to say something, let's make sure we use our microphones. Would be good?
Or even when you vote, please.
Okay.
And I didn't use my microphone right when I said that. Or even when you vote, please.
Okay, so Emily, could we have a roll call, please?
Erickson,
Present.
Kraft,
Present.
Syme,
Present.
Peterson,
Present.
Oster,
Present.
ETJ member Welch,
Present.
Chairwoman Speck.
Here. All right, we've got a quorum, that's always a good thing. Next, if you would look at your minute meetings from our May 5th meeting. Are there any corrections needed at all? Hearing
I'll make a
none,
motion
do
to
we
approve.
have, I'm sorry?
Make a motion to approve.
Thank you. And do we have a second?
Second.
Very good. We have a motion to approve and a second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All
Aye.
those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you. Okay, we have no consent items here, but our old business is new business and exciting business and some business that has been in progress for quite some time, with a lot of people having been a part of this comprehensive plan. And so we are going to have the consideration of ordinance number 1097, Ideas Flow Here, Yankton 2045, a comprehensive plan for Yankton, South Dakota.
Yeah, maybe some initial remarks before Amy Haase from RDG gives her presentation. When you've read the plan and now when you're listening to this presentation, the options at the end of the evening will be similar to what we see when we're looking at the CIP. So it could be a recommendation to move it forward to the City Commission as presented. It could be a recommendation to move it forward to the City Commission with, one or more bullet points about specific items that you think might need a closer look. Like there's some future land use proposal that you have questions about. We can discuss that also before that's included in a motion, and then we'll go from there at that point in time when we get through Amy's presentation and question and answers.
Great. Well, thank you, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here. Thanks again for this opportunity. My name's Amy Haase with RDG Planning and Design, and we were excited to start just a little over a year ago on this journey of helping update the comprehensive plan. It had been roughly about 20 years with a lot of accomplished out of your previous plan. So that was really exciting to see. It's always especially rewarding for us to come and work with a community who we know is going to use the plan and use the work that we do with you. So we were excited to be here again with you. I like to talk at the beginning here a little bit about kind of the process. So high-level overview, there's kind of really, if you want to boil it down, really simple 3 steps in the process. Where are we at today? Where do we want to go? And how are we going to get there? At the beginning of where we are today, there's 2 things that we're kind of doing simultaneously. One of that is the community engagement, and the other one is the data collection. So the community engagement is helping us listen and learn from our community members about what's important to them, what do they see the future opportunities being, and maybe some of the challenges that need to be addressed. At the same time, we're collecting that data. So as you can see here, we had a great advisory committee that we met with several times over the period, including most of you. We did a session of listening sessions, the websites, some interactive mapping, the survey, roundtables, the design workshop. We had a lot of opportunities where community members did come out, were involved, gave us their input. Based on that community input and what we were learning from the data collection, go ahead. We identified kind of 9 vision or goal statement pieces to help kind of direct the overall plan, and then as we got into the plan elements, there's some specific goals we'll go over tonight for each of what we refer to often as the plan elements. But under the vision, we really see kind of 9 key areas. Developing in ways that use land and infrastructure and utilities and transportation and all of those important systems to us in the most effective manner that we possibly can. We want to promote infill development and reinvest in our existing neighborhoods because they're really important and they're a great source that kind of really ties pretty closely to number 1, right? We want to use those resources efficiently. If we're doing that, we're reinvesting in our existing neighborhoods. We need to protect environmentally sensitive areas and preserve our agricultural and habitat resources. So again, how are we developing in ways that do that? We need to create a city that is accessible for all of our residents, from our youngest residents that just want to get to the pool today to our oldest residents that wanted to get to the Dairy Queen for a nice cone this afternoon. We want to make sure the outdoors and nature are accessible to all residents and attractive to visitors. That's a big quality of life piece that we heard from many folks that participated in this, is the outdoor activities, and that kind of quality of life piece is really important here in the community. We need to create quality, affordable housing for every stage of life. So from our youngest residents that are just moving out of their parents' home and starting out their lives to our oldest residents that are looking to downsize and look for things that are easier to maintain. We need to invest in the community services with a focus on the next generation. And then we need to make investments that reinforce Yankton's community character and sense of place. And finally, just making sure that all of our decisions are made in a really open and collaborative manner, which is, I think, something that the community is really strives hard to do, but that's a really important one to maintain. Okay, so at the same time I mentioned we were doing a lot of the data collection. So we look at the demographics, we look at economics. I could spend most of the night just talking about all the data pieces and kind of geeking out, but I don't need everybody's eyes to glass over. But one of the things that we saw here is the community really has had really steady growth. Often we think about kind of the growth that's happening in kind of the retirement population that is very attracted to Yankton, but we also have seen kind of good growth in our younger residents too, and younger families, and them growing their families here in being a destination for that. And obviously you also see a little bump too from Mount Marty University continuing to keep that kind of younger population, which we usually see a dip in most places, but they help you maintain that. Go ahead. So from the demographics to the land use, what are our existing land uses and how do we divide that up? And so we can begin to mesh those pieces together to say, okay, where do we see growth happening? How much growth do we see happening? And where does that begin to occur? So go ahead. So in the next piece of that step is what's our future population? We look at kind of 3 different potential scenarios. In this case, we did look at about just under a 1% annual growth rate, and we use that to look at what we see then as what sort of residential land we need to support that growth rate. How does that correlate into how much commercial uses we need to support that population? And then really on the industrial side, it really kind of comes down, it's harder to tie sometimes to the population piece, but it's more about what do we think are the opportunities that we continue to have here and the goals as a community we have to grow our job base. Go ahead. So with the land use piece, we can kind of boil it down into 4 core areas. One of the things that's different about this land use plan than from your previous plan is that there's a little bit more of kind of mixing of uses. So one of the things that we've kind of heard and learned over the last 20 years from many of the communities we work with is how do we continue to make sure that we're not siloing activities so much, and how do we create kind of opportunities for flexibility and mixing of uses. So we describe it as predominantly residential, but these are the uses that kind of lead with residential, but that doesn't mean that you couldn't have a very low, like in our low or medium urban, really low key, similar intensity sort of commercial use. The insurance agent that converts a home on one of our busier corridors, maybe from a home to commercial use is an example of that, of kind of mixing those. In the same way with the high urban, how are we making sure that maybe some of our higher intensity urban uses can mix together and allow for that connectivity, because that was one thing that we heard that was really important. Then we have uses that we describe as they're predominantly commercial, so they lead more with that commercial. That's our local commercial or regional commercial, so a lot of what is out on the highway. And then finally, the downtown. Then we have the job centers. I think probably in the previous plan, we identified as industrial uses. And we've started using kind of the job center terminology, because when people think industrial, they often think kind of smokestacks and heavy kind of rough uses. And that's really not kind of the industrial that we have here. I mean, you do have things that we want to make sure are screened and all of those things that are really important, but they're really kind of job centers and job bases that really kind of also often have a mixing of intensity. And then finally, our reserve and our park and our civic spaces, kind of those being kind of our final categories. The next piece of the plan are what we often refer to as the plan elements. So transportation and parks and infrastructure and just those pieces that make up kind of the framework of our community. Beginning with transportation. So 4 key goals were identified. I'm not going to read every one of these policies and strategies here tonight, but they're all outlined in your plan, and we're happy to talk about those a little bit more. But some of the key goals around transportation included coordinating our transportation and land use, making sure that they work together as a kind of critical connections being maintained, and growing those as we grow, especially to the east and the west. Creating and maintaining a safe and well-connected multimodal network. So this is something you're already working on through your multimodal transportation plan. There's a lot of things here where we're just trying to reinforce some of the work that's already been done, and that piece of it, the trails and the multimodal piece, was something that we heard was really important to a lot of community members. We need to make sure we're planning and budgeting for transportation improvements to the existing system. So we got to grow the system as the community grows, but we also need to maintain the existing system that we have. And then finally, just how do we continue to embrace new transportation modes into the future? There's a lot of things today that we have kind of transportation options that we're seeing in a lot of communities that we wouldn't have maybe considered 20 years ago. Scooters seem to be everywhere in a lot of communities, or, now I don't know if I'm quite ready for a driverless taxi, but who knows in 20 years what the future will look like. So we wanted to make sure that flexibility was there. Housing is another critical piece in our community, and really has become probably, I'm sure it was a key issue in the previous plan, but I think it's continued to grow as an issue, not only locally, but nationally. So what are the 4 key goals we identified here? Well, making sure we're encouraging a good variety of housing types, sizes, price points, all of those things. It kind of goes back to that earlier kind of overarching goal that we want to make sure we've got housing for every stage of life. That's making sure we have a variety of housing. We need to reinforce and maintain our existing housing stock. That's our best source of affordable housing. We can't build homes at those price points anymore, so we need to make sure those are well maintained and taken care of. We need to preserve quality options and make sure that those are stable residential neighborhoods too. So we're not just investing in the housing, but investing in the neighborhoods, the streets, the parks, and all the things that make up our great neighborhoods. And then finally, supporting attainable housing options for new residents and local employees that want to live here in Yankton. So, and all of these also begin to tie back to your housing study that you have done in the last few years. On the recreation side, on our parks and recreation side, this is an asset that people rave about here, that we heard really great things about. So maintaining maintaining and enhancing the existing system is really important. One of the things that we heard when we were specifically doing the land use workshop is we're really pretty good on parks today. We don't need to have this big effort to do a big, you don't have this big gap in the park system that exists today, but we need to continue to maintain what we have and to monitor our future needs as we're growing into new areas, because people want to maintain that level of service into our new growth areas. So we need to expand the recreation recreation options as neighborhoods kind of grow out. And that really does mean kind of sometimes thinking ahead about where we want those to be into the future. Plan and provide the system of interconnected trails and greenways. That's one way that we can really kind of continue to elevate our park system too, is how are we connecting those all together. And then finally, just sustain fiscal responsibility with increased maintenance needs is a challenge every community is facing and a goal we'll have to continue to address. Go ahead. On the public service side, budget and maintain all facilities and adapting to the changing needs that we have. Yankton has done a great job of maintaining the facilities that you have and done great work over the last decade with regards to water and wastewater. So just continuing to maintain those and address the needs that you have. Build cooperation, coordination with other public and private entities. Strategically invest in our older neighborhoods in Yankton too, right? So we got to grow the system in some places, but we have to maintain the existing system too. And then finally, continue to involve the city departments in all of our plan development and implementation, right? This plan doesn't live in isolation from the other city departments. The next section we called the visual city. The previous plan really, probably in this section, focused a lot more on the downtown. The downtown, we're seeing a lot of investments. It's a vibrant district. In this case, we took a little bit more of a shift, kept a focus on some of the gateways, but also then on the Broadway corridor. Our key goals here are enhancing the experience of a traveler to and through Yankton, because sometimes maybe the only experience they have is what they see from the highway, from Highway 81 or 52. So how's that experience that they're having? Making sure that we're creating neighborhoods and commercial centers that are attractive and functional and active. And finally, third one there, bringing people together through kind of physical and social connections. How are we creating spaces and places where people kind of want to hang out and get to know their neighbors, but also take a lot of pride in? And then finally, sharing reliable expectations and values. So how do we continue to kind of maintain that? So that was the last section. I don't have a piece on the implementation, but there is a really nice implementation section, I think, that gives a good summary of every major recommendation and kind of the timeline for that piece of it. So happy to answer any questions that you might have. And again, just thank you for the opportunity to be part of this again. And I did find a typo when I was. Did you see that?
It's all good. Low.
I saw it and I just went, oh.
All good. Okay, were there questions from planning commissioners?
Yeah, Amy,
Dave?
I guess there's a lot of bullet points in there. So where's the prioritization come from? And how best to achieve that in those bullet points?
Right. So I think there's two kind of interesting parts to that. There's the short and the long term. So there's a little bit of that in the implementation section. But on this kind of the side to this, the other piece that the city's working on is the strategic plan. And the strategic plan really is a 3 to 5 year look at what are the priorities within that kind of shorter period of time. So that's actually something that will be coming forward more in July. And I think that drills down and gets much more specific because this is kind of the big picture. So they work really nice together hand in hand. And we've been looking at things of let's make sure the language and terminology that we're using work together in each one of those. So did that answer your question? Okay.
I had a question that might be too much in the weeds, but it was something that I wanted clarification on. I was looking at the transportation section of the comprehensive plan, and you have a great map that has the functional classifications of roads, whether they're a principal arterial, minor arterial, a collector, or a local road. Mm-hmm. I was wondering where those classifications come from, if that's by streets and roads, or if you guys came up with those classifications.
So there's two different maps there, just to make sure which one you're looking at. So there's one that's the existing system, which is actually kind of, that's actually the state DOT and the city working together, and that's kind of how they actually determine some of the federal funding that you get. So that's actually something we go up to the state DOT to look at. Now we mesh that with where we see future growth going to create the future one. So that's just something of working with kind of staff and what we see from the land use for that future system.
That answers my question.
That's a great question.
Yeah, thank you.
I'm going to add to that a little bit, but, so on the future transportation map, when we see plats, when you as planning commissioners see plats, we always talk about the extension of the street grid, so we always want to make sure we have right-of-way corridors, or at least land reserved for right-of-way through easements or something on section lines, which are substantially there already based on historic dedications, quarter lines and 16th lines, or you refer back to the comprehensive plan if there's some other unique alignment corridor that needs to be in place, that would be identified in the comprehensive plan. You might remember our 2003 plan had what we called an east relief route, or a truck route, that took Bill Baggs Road up at an angle all the way up by the airport. Well, we've learned over the last 20 years that the chances of receiving any funding assistance for that is almost zero at this point in time. If it would have been built 25 years ago, maybe we had a chance. So the key then to think about is how are other roads going to fill some of that capacity need? You know, when the DOT is telling us that 4th Street and Broadway already, you know, aren't really as busy as they can handle at this point in time. So, yeah, you'll see some of the designations in the future map, like on Fertig and bringing Burley down, or Penina down, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I think that's, I'll pile on too. I think that's a really important point of like how do we continue to disperse some of the local traffic off of Broadway? And that even goes for some of our east-west connections, right? Because if your east-west connections don't go through, then you're always coming back to that north-south to get up and around to go east or west. So all of those are really important to the grid of it is really important.
I have another maybe picayune question, it's probably more for David. My thing with flood maps, you know, as we go back to that, the potential of new housing shows areas east and west for potential residential. Then you overlay that with a flood map, and both of those areas have some issues. Is that going to be a big limiting factor or a problem?
So it will have to be considered in those areas where it's designated, of course, as development occurs. In a generalized land use map like we're looking at here, we just want to kind of have, you know, larger areas that identify types of development that are appropriate in that location. And then a secondary step would be, as a subdivision comes in, consider the implications of you know, the flood designation on whatever type of development is being proposed.
Yeah, and that goes back to kind of protecting our sensitive areas. So how do we incorporate that into that kind of park and greenway system then too?
Other questions? Comments?
So I'll make one final comment. This is still a draft at this point, and we found a place on the future land use map at the intersection of Fertig and Whiting that needs to be identified as regional commercial, as opposed to, I think it's identified as residential or something at this point in time. That area where Don Tucker owned that property northeast of that intersection is more of a regional commercial sort of activity. So we'll make that edit in the map as it goes forward to the city commission. And then obviously there's several typos that folks have found, and those small edits will be made before it goes on to the city commission for its next step also. And that doesn't mean it needs to change this body's recommendation on the plan necessarily. What we're looking for here is if you have any bigger picture items that you think should be different or mentioned specifically, other than how they're presented in the draft document now.
Well, and this isn't, when you say bigger picture, there's that, on page 50 with the parks and land use description, there's a photo of a park, and it's got that elephant slide that's been gone for a lot of years. So I don't know if images are going to be included in this as well, but I think we've got maybe we could probably snap a more recent photo of that park, because that's not even there anymore.
Yeah, we had our staff take some of these, and RDG staff take some of them. My kids used to love the elephant slide, so I wouldn't.
There was a
It was
big,
around for a long time.
there was a big hullabaloo when they took that out.
I know, but
Yeah.
my grandson it goes a little too fast, and he hit the back of his head on it when he got to the bottom, so maybe that's why they. But yeah, we'll make note of a few things with the pictures also.
Perfect. Okay, so do we have a recommendation?
I would move adoption,
Okay, as is?
as is, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, with the corrections
With the
as
edits and
noted, yes.
corrections, we've,
Yep.
very good. Okay, so we have a motion, we have a second?
I'll second it.
Second. Okay, we have a motion and a second to accept the comprehensive plan as presented with edits as we have discussed. Can we have a roll call, please? Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, excuse me. Are there any comments from the public here? No? Thank you. Thank you. Okay, Emily.
Oster,
Aye.
Peterson,
Aye.
Sime,
Aye.
Kraft,
Aye.
Erickson,
Aye.
Chairwoman Speck.
Aye. Okay, motion passes. Thank you so much. Thank you, Amy,
Yes,
for all
thank
of your
you.
hard work.
Yeah, it's
Sure
great.
appreciate it.
I'll see you at the end of the month.
That's right. Okay. All right, so that really kind of concludes the old business. A little bit of I was telling Dave, kind of a bittersweet meeting here. Lots of exciting things, but it's kind of a last meeting here. I'm going to be done, and I've been privileged to be a part of this body for a number of years, and so Dave, thank you so much for letting me be a part of it. That's been great. So if we have no other comments at this point, we will adjourn sine die. Do we have a motion for adjournment?
Motion to adjourn sine die.
Okay, and a second?
Second.
Second. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, same sign. Okay, we are adjourned for this portion.
Okay, we'll let folks shuffle seats around, and if Kay and Jason would come forward and find a chair, they're not assigned, and we'll let Deb. We need to get your edits, so. How about you leave that? Perfect. Or maybe we leave that with Amy. Then when we find our seats, I'll call the meeting to order, and we'll go through a roll call process and election of officers. Okay, in the absence of a chair, I'll call the meeting to order. Emily, could we have a roll call, please, of the 2025-2026 Planning Commission?
Erickson,
Present.
Kraft,
Present.
Sime. Peterson,
Present.
Tullis,
Present.
Oster,
Here.
O'Neill,
Here.
ETJ member Welch.
Here.
Okay, thanks so much. Really appreciate new members, Kay O'Neill and Jason Tellis, and also returning members Kraft and Erickson for agreeing to serve on the Planning Commission. I look forward to reading a lot about your future endeavors, because this is my last meeting also, by the way. But I do care, and I'll always care. So in your memo, I kind of set forth a little cheat sheet for how a motion for officers, candidates can be made. We used to kind of fumble through a nomination process separately with a chair and a vice chair. We've since learned a much easier, streamlined way of doing it. And if somebody kind of wants to follow that cheat sheet and nominate next year's victim, next year's chair and vice chair, we would entertain that motion at this time.
I would nominate Commissioner Syme.
And do you have a vice chair nomination to tag on with that?
And Commissioner Peterson as vice chair. I see you there.
Is there a second?
I second it.
And that all nominations cease. I should have added that.
Yes, I would add that all, or ask that all nominations cease and a unanimous vote be cast.
Emily, could we have a roll call, please?
Peterson,
Aye.
Tellis,
Aye.
Syme, Kraft,
Aye.
Aye.
Erickson,
Aye.
O'Neill,
Aye.
Oster.
Aye.
All right. Chairwoman Syme, I'll turn the meeting over to you.
Thank you very much. All right. Well, I'm going to certainly mess this up a whole bunch as we figure out what we're doing here, but thank you, everyone, for voting me in as chairwoman of the Yankton City Planning Commission, and Commissioner Peterson, welcome, as well as vice chair. Okay, so as we move on here, we have no we have no new business, so that's easy. You don't have to ask for anything for that. And the only other business we have is the building permit, and I would just ask for the commission's patience, because I would like to bring up, just make a special comment about Dave Mingo. I just want to acknowledge that Dave has been very special to us here. After 31 years of dedicated service to our community, Dave is retiring. It's truly an honor for me to recognize your many contributions. Over 3 decades, you've been an integral part of Yankton's growth and development. And I remember when I joined the Planning Commission in the summer of 2020, due to COVID restrictions, we couldn't meet in an office. So we had our initial chat at a picnic table at Riverside Park.
Which you do every
Yes, it was definitely one of the more pleasant ways to begin, and you patiently walked me through what it would mean to join this commission. And that personal touch really set the tone for my time here, and it's just one example of your thoughtful approach. Your institutional knowledge, your commitment to thoughtful planning, and your steady hand have been invaluable to this commission and to the city as a whole. You've seen Yankton evolve significantly, and your work has undeniably shaped the landscape of our city. On behalf of the entire City Planning Commission, and indeed the citizens of Yankton, thank you. Thank you for your tireless efforts, your expertise, and your unwavering dedication. We wish you all the very best in your retirement, and you have certainly earned it. Thank you. And with that, we can take a look at the building report.
So the building permit report is the same one you saw last month with our change in meeting date from the second Monday to the first Monday. We're within a day or two of being able to get you the updated one. So we wanted to make sure to include this since we had some new commissioners on board. They could at least see the format of the report. I can tell you that May's report is looking pretty strong. So we should be hanging in there with a pretty healthy valuation for 2025. I also will like to thank Chairwoman Syme for the comments. Anyway, not good at that, but the whole next month is going to be weird, but my wife told me I can get through it, so I will. So with that, I'd ask for any questions you may have about the building permit or anything going on in town. I'd be happy to answer any questions commissioners may have. The only other piece of information we didn't mention for the record is that Bridget Benson, City Commissioner, has been appointed as the City Commission liaison to the Planning Commission. So we will set up an orientation time. We're looking at the week of the 16th, if that works, for the new Planning Commissioners, and for Commissioner Benson. We'll try and get that out of the way before the next meeting so everybody can hit the ground running in July while I'm fishing.
All right, if there are no other comments, questions, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Can I make just a quick comment about working with Dave? I was news director at WNAX for a lot of years. All the years that Dave was in his position, we did what, innumerable stories about things that were going on. He was a wonderful representative for the city, for the development, and after working with politicians a lot, it was refreshing to work with Dave, because he'd usually answer after only 2 or 3 times, so. But no, it was good information. We did a lot of good stories over the years. Dave, you represented the city very well. Appreciate that. On behalf of our listeners and the citizens, thank you.
Yeah, it's been my honor, and I feel like it's kind of a one-way street, and my family and I have benefited immensely from this, and anything I've been able to help with, I've been more than happy to, and just seeing the way this community has really moved forward. You start talking about numbers here, and in 31 years, there's been about $1 billion worth of public and private investment in this town. And I can't take credit for any of it, but just being there when it happened and maybe providing a little bit of guidance here and there was super exciting.
Is there a motion to adjourn?
I'll move to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. We are adjourned. Thank you very much.